And good morning, everybody. It is Wonderful Wednesday with Irene Gouge. Now, Irene Gouge is a sleep coach and she's also a postpartum doula. So, this is brilliant because you must help so many people, Irene, with their children, because it's such a confusing time. It's an exhausting time, isn't it, for parents?
It's so exhausting.
And what made you go into it? There must be a story.
Yeah. So I will tell you that 19 years ago, when my son was born, I was a school teacher. So I was like, this is going to be great. I have experience with children. I babysat, all that kind of stuff. And then I have my son, and I was like, I don't know what he needs.
Okay.
And so here we were, like, doing all the things. And I'm like, why is this child crying all the time? Why am I walking around the house miles and like nobody is sleeping? And then he's eating all day long and all night long. And I was like, what is happening?
Okay.
And so, I became a sleep coach because I was so sleep deprived for so many years. And then we tried to do all the things and just like, let me leave my baby to cry. And we tried that. And he just cried really hard and really long for long periods of time. But really, when I look back and reflect on that season, so much of it had to do with the fact that I didn't understand what he was actually communicating to me. And I hated the newborn season. There might be some listeners, some parents who might be going through it right now. And they're like, I wish you would tell me what you need. And it was like what I didn't know. And then as I became trained as a sleep coach, and then I went and became trained as a postpartum doula and actually was in home with families, with babies, and seeing what they were communicating, that everything shifted for me. And then I actually saw like, oh, here's what you're telling me, and understanding that. And that made a big difference. And now I geek out and I love newborns, and they're telling us from the beginning what they want. But again, that's sometimes like something as new parents, we're just not even aware that they could be communicating.
No, that's
that
right. Because they have different cries, don't they?
They do.
Yeah. And we all know the hungry cry. It makes us really on edge. I've got to get somewhere and feed you.
Yeah. And sometimes we don't realize, like, the one big aha moment. Like, I've had many loving lessons that I've been learning along the way, which is why my company is called Loving Lessons Learned. But it was like recognizing, like, if I knew and understood developmentally what children were going through, how much better our communication would be. Like, I didn't know that newborns eat 8 to 12 times in a 24-hour window. And as a new parent, I was like, well, I eat 3 to 5 times a day. So like doing that many times, like, can be very maddening.
Yeah.
And you can feel like you're losing your mind as a new parent, because you're like, all I do is feed you. And then we change your diaper, and then you sleep, and then we do it all again. And so it can be very exhausting in those moments.
Yes.
And so for me, it has been just this blessing to be able to like educate parents on, hey, babies are going to eat 8 to 12 times a day. How can we have support through that process? How do we work on ourselves, and take care of ourselves as we're also taking care of our children? Because I think sometimes what happens is we focus so much on our child, we forget about ourselves. And that happened for me. Like, I was so focused on him that I wasn't taking care of myself, and I was like running myself to the ground.
Yeah. I think that happens a lot.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guilt comes our way because you think you're doing it wrong, or you can start comparing yourself to other people. And it can be a miserable time. I know I see a lot of people who, who are just coming out of that phase, but they're still in it because they're like scared of having another baby because of what had happened previously. So it's, it is hard. I think it would be so much nicer if babies were just born when they're like 3 months old.
When those first few months.
Just forget that. But bears, I don't know if you know about the life cycle, how babies are born with bears, that they have them in hibernation and they come out as tiny little things, and the bear is asleep, and the little bear that's about that big finds its way to the teat and then drinks itself to this huge little like furry teddy bear. When the mummy wakes up, oh, there you are, let's go play.
Right.
oh, that would be really nice, wouldn't it?
It would be so nice, and nobody has to wake up and change the diaper and prep the bottle or, breastfeed or whatever. All those things. Absolutely. If we could just be like the bears.
It'd be like the bears. We could pretend though, so that you could imagine.
Yeah. But, Claudia, I think what you bring up is a really important piece, right? Like the bear is resting. They're hibernating.
Oh.
And oftentimes we don't recognize that in that postpartum period, that as moms, we are recovering from that birth, and we have this mistake here, especially here in the United States, where, we think like, well, after 6 weeks, you go back to work, and things like that, like your maternity leave is ending. And that's typically when all the troubles can begin, because like now we're feeling like we have to put our babies on like these schedules and do all these things. But that postpartum period is a season of rest and moms being taken care of in that, which would be glorious. But that is not always the case for a lot of families that might be tuning in and listening and feeling like, oh my gosh, what do we do? But, I like to bring this up because I think it's an important conversation for families to have, for parents to say, hey, what does it look like to recover from this birth? Because it really takes the body 2 years to fully recover from giving birth.
It does. And it's sort of like your teeth regaining the calcium, everything.
Yeah.
Your bones to go back, your pelvis. And it is a hard time. It is not a bowl full of cherries. However, if you have a strong support system around you,
yes,
you can pick out the cherries, and it can taste a lot nicer than in it. It doesn't need to be moldy time. It can be actually enjoyable. And for some people it really is, if you can put your order in, order a baby that sleeps, that's really good. But that just doesn't really happen, I'm afraid. So, and there's always going to be something, and then there's the teething, and then there's this, and then there's the rashes, and there's the dribbling, and it's like, I remember, it's like first one, it's just like, oh my gosh, it's a steep learning curve.
There is. And I think that one of the things that I love about you, Claudia, and the work that you do is that you help parents work on those thoughts that they have, because like right during that whole time we're being triggered by fear and all. And I love you always say, like, free your mind, free your worries,
free your fears.
Free your fears. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, breathe love, so that you're not breathing fear. Breathe love is a mantra that I encourage parents to think about, because like love stands for, we're going to listen, we're going to observe, we're going to validate and empower. And so breathe love is a framework that I share with my families, no matter what age or stage you're in. And I think it's even good for adults too, because I think it helps us think about like our thoughts. And a lot of times we're sabotaging ourselves. And I remember when you and I had worked together, like you were like, tell yourself a better story, play a better movie, and it's important to recognize that in parenting, like our children are going to trigger things within us when they cry, when we're having those moments. And do we have the tools to get back on track?
You're right, Irene. It can cause a lot of internal upset as well, especially if you felt as though you weren't nurtured. Mm-hmm. And now you're thinking, you've got this baby and I love it so much. How come my parents didn't love me like that? And that can bring up a huge amount of self-doubt about yourself, as though you suddenly feel inferior. You won't have the capacity to love this baby because you weren't loved, or you get very resentful, or so many emotions. And of course, it's a roller coaster of emotions anyway, because your hormones are settling. Like you said, it takes 2 years. So it's like, it's not surprising that people can get very have those anxious feelings, get very stressed out, have sleepless nights anyway, on top of having sleepless nights. And literally feel as though their nervous system, they can just feel so frazzled, and then they get impatient, and then they, it's like, it can be a whole cycle. And you're right. I know together we have helped a couple of clients, and it's great because you do your bit because you're an expert in that area, and I'm not, and I do my bit because I'm an expert in my area, and I love that because it takes a team sometimes, doesn't it, Irene?
It does. It really takes a village, and it's thinking about the support you have in place,
Yeah.
and I think that's why it's important to learn what others are doing and understand that, and then how can we find the right person to help us through
Yeah.
that process too. And so I have really just loved getting to know you and the work you do, because at first, like, it was confusing in terms of like, why, what is she going to do to hypnotize me? What is that all about? And, the more I have learned about you and your process and all that, like, I can see how beneficial it is for us to recognize like how we can grow and
Yeah.
evolve and
Yeah.
change. And again, it is like freeing those fears, like coming from a place of like, am I showing up in like from a place of love and learning?
Yeah.
And asking ourselves better questions, because oftentimes we are bringing in a lot of judgment, a lot of resentment, becoming victims through the process, and even recognizing that. And what we don't realize, and like sometimes parents are like, wait, I thought we were talking about sleep and you're talking about thinking. And I also talk to families about how they're feeding their babies and themselves, and then also moving their bodies. But it's like all of those things touch sleep. And then our thoughts actually are what don't let us sleep at night, because sometimes we're stuck in those shame, anxiety, guilt cycles. So we need to recognize we can lead ourselves to better sleep.
Yes, absolutely. And again, it's the chaos in somebody's house can
Mhm.
cause lack of sleep
Yeah.
for the whole family, because you can't find anything because you're in chaos, because you've
Mhm.
got so much to do. And that's why, even I remember we've even brought in people who can help organize,
Yeah.
organizers who can do it for you and help you set up systems so that you know
Mhm.
where everything is, because it can be so overwhelming. It
Yeah.
really can. And so tell me more about the postpartum doula bit. Do you help them when they're just tell us more about that bit.
Yeah. So as a postpartum doula, I will oftentimes support families like right when baby comes home from hospital. You're like, I gave birth. You're like, what do I do with you? What does this look like? And so some families, they really love the opportunity to be able to like have somebody be with them while they're nursing, breastfeeding. Moms will have somebody to talk to and connect and be like, oh, here's all these questions that came up for me during the day, and we can talk about it.
Nice.
And, they also get to take care of themselves because, they can go to the bathroom and I'll hold the baby, burp the baby, change the diaper, help settle baby, and mom just has to feed. So it really is about working to protect the parents' rest as well. Sometimes dads will join us because they want to learn too, but sometimes we're going to divide and conquer. So it really is like in-home support, through the night and even during the daytime. And it's learning and educating ourselves about what's happening in this season with little ones. And, oftentimes I'll work with families sometimes for just like 1 or 2 weeks just to get them started. I've worked with families for up to a year. So, it just varies on families and how much support they want. Sometimes knowing that like I have 1 or 2 nights where I'm going to be able to get more rest. Parents
Oh,
really
I
love that.
love that.
And I'm with twins right now. I just had twins last night that I was with on a postpartum doula shift. And, it's, helping families create those systems, those routines so we don't get into chaos.
There you go.
Because we need to have a good system. And that was something that, like, as a school teacher, I had a really good system in the classroom. I was like, why am I not doing this at home? So when I was staying home and doing a home daycare, I was implementing the systems that I coach my families on, because it's like when you have 2 or more children, like, you are outnumbered. And so I needed to have good systems in place and thinking about, how do I make this age appropriate here? How do I do that there? And most parents will tell me, they're like, I am not a teacher. I do not want to teach my child, but I'm like, your child, you're already doing it. So let's do it better. And so sometimes being able to like talk through and figure out what is the best kind of routine that can work for us. And some of that comes from the place of like, we haven't learned to take care of ourselves as we're taking care of our children. And that's what I focus a lot during doula sessions, even sleep coaching, because it's like, we can't just take care of our babies. We have to take care of ourselves. So like, for example, on a postpartum doula shift, I'll tell a mama, like, I'll be like, oh, baby's ready to eat. Do you need to go to the restroom?
Yeah.
And I've had moms, they're like, I can go to the bathroom. I'm like, of course you can. Like, go do that. And like, just to be able to then sit down and nurse for 15 to 20 minutes in comfort, and what that looks like. Because so many times we're just go, 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 and we forget. And it's
Yeah.
those little things, those little reminders of how do we do that with our little ones.
Yeah. And I mean, it goes back to the thing on the aeroplane, put your oxygen mask on
Yes.
first and then help the child, because nobody can pour from an empty cup.
Mhm.
And I think you offer a really good, resource here for the whole world, because I also know that you have wonderful tips and tricks on your website.
Yes, I have some classes and courses, and I try to share a lot of tips on my social media just to educate families.
Hmm.
Like there's no formula, there's no schedule. And so much of it is like if we can tune into what our child is communicating, then we can make these better decisions. Cause you know what? Like if you go to Google, there's a lot of information, and
Yeah.
some people are even using Chat GPT as a sleep coach. And yes, there's a lot of information, but how do you make it make sense for your family? How do you make it make sense for like who you are and what you know and kind of your history
Yeah,
and what you're bringing
exactly.
into it?
Yeah, exactly. So is there any, what happens with the families? Do you like become friends? I mean, I can only imagine that must happen. I mean, it's so bonding, that time, that beginning time, it's precious.
It is such a blessing and a gift. Like it almost makes me tear up each time
Okay.
because I do. Sorry.
No, yeah, there you
There's,
go. You see, but that's what we want.
yeah,
People want to work with somebody who really cares.
yeah.
You know,
It,
it's
it's
key.
really quite a blessing. I share that from my heart because to be vulnerable, to be like, "Hey, tell me about your bleeding. Tell me about like your boobs are leaking, all this
Oh,
stuff."
crusty and flaky and falling off.
And then moms are crying and dads are like, "I don't even know what to do with this baby. I don't know how to help my wife," and all this stuff. And just to
Yeah,
be able to
that's
like just be there and give them that love and support through it. Because I think what's very different about postpartum doula support is when you can have somebody who's not just taking care of the baby, it's like taking care of the family and them feeling
yeah.
loved and nurtured so that they can show up and love and nurture their baby. But I do become friends with a lot of my families. I can't help it, but I think that just comes with like the territory. And it's just such a vulnerable time for parents, and
Yeah,
to just sit with somebody and listen and be with them in that moment. And to me, like I remember those like nights where I was by myself rocking my baby and I was like, am I ever going to sleep? And then the stories that I was telling myself were not so good and sabotaging me. And if I could have had somebody, like the reason why I got into the work as a postpartum doula was like I was helping families with sleep coaching, but there was something more to it. And like just being hands-on in the home, especially at that young age, it made me realize like if somebody could have come alongside and said, "Hey, you're doing hard work. Yeah, this totally sucks. Yeah, like this is really hard."
I
Like
agree.
it doesn't make it easier. It just
Yeah,
affirms us in like there's a lot of hard work we're doing as parents. And we're seeking that validation of like, am I doing it right? Like, what is the right way? And then Dr. Google is trying to tell us all these things, and it's confusing to make sense of like what's happening right here, right now.
yeah. And if you got somebody to say it's normal to feel like
Mhm.
this, it's okay. It does suck, and it
Yeah.
will pass.
Yeah.
You will get through this.
Yeah.
And then eventually your baby's 3 months old. When it should have been born, really.
Yeah, and Claudia, it's so funny that you're like, can we just get to 3 months?" But like it's a lot of families will still have a hard time, because it's like sometimes it's like those foundations. It's like really going back to like, was our little one communicating? And I do believe that all parents, we are doing the best we can with the
Oh,
tools we
yeah.
have for
Mhm.
sure. But it's like sometimes recognizing like, I think there's a generation of parents right now that are really seeking to find that right support, and are wanting to heal themselves as they're also going through this parenting journey because they want to do better because when we know better, we can do better.
Yeah. And then I think people beat themselves up as well because they think they have to do it perfectly.
Yes.
And, really, it's just that one person is doing it differently to how you're doing it.
Mhm.
And I say that with a lot of my mums is that it's okay. Let him do the diaper. Let him do it.
Yeah.
He will just do it differently. It doesn't need to be the way you do it. but at
Yeah.
least he's doing it.
Yes. And I always say there's always learning. There is always learning, no matter what way we do that diaper. There's always learning
Yeah.
for everyone.
And if he gets wet in the meantime, it doesn't matter. It will be
Lesson
a
learned.
story. Yeah. Comedy is tragedy with time. Well, then you have the stories, but it's like, the thing is it a lot of women, and I've done this myself, you know, no, I'll just do it. Oh, you're doing it wrong. And it just doesn't, the baby doesn't know. It doesn't matter. It might take them half an hour. It just doesn't matter. You get to go and sit, just don't watch.
Yeah. Just put a mask on, put a little eye mask on, get a little rest, take a little a rest. You don't have to nap. Just let it be.
He doesn't drop the baby, it's fine.
Yeah. No, but I mean, and that is such words of wisdom, right? Like to learn to delegate, you know, and that was again, like I'm a recovering control freak and perfectionist. And so having these skills and abilities to learn how to let go, you know, and that is part of the parenting journey, learning to surrender and recognizing how can we bring in more play and more fun? Because like you said, you know, it is all about some comedy in this. It's pretty comical.
Got to laugh at it. You've got to bring it in. And I must admit, that's what I try and do, as you know, because I give lots of techniques and tools and strategies, as I know you do too. So it's like, it's wonderful. And I love that we get to see each other on here again. And because I do love your energy, Irene, you're so, you know, full and bubbly. And I can only imagine what a blessing you are in people's houses, you know, and I expect you fit right on in. And if there's any other children around, I expect they absolutely adore you. So yeah, I can only imagine that you are a gift. You are a gift. So thank you, Irene. Thank you for watching, everybody. And because otherwise, Irene and I could go on talking forever, I expect. So take care, everybody. Have a wonderful day. And it's goodbye from me, Claudia Rickard. And it's goodbye from Irene Gouge. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for watching. Bye.